are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Okay, episode 31, here we go. Episode 31 is the stories that you have sent me. The crazy, the weird, the just fucking bonkers stories that you have taken the time to send me. I always say it, please ask. I'm asking all the time for the stories. And here they are. Okay, so first of all, I will just say hello to everybody who has joined the group, who is a new member. Thank you very much for joining. All you people who are liking the page, hello. So this episode, I'm going to take you through the stories that you have sent to me, and they are fucking amazing. They're a mix. We've got true crime, we've got survival, we've got it all. Okay, let's go. On May 26th, 1990, in Miami, Marlene Warren hears a knock on her front door, so she goes to see who's there. Marlene opens the door, and someone dressed as a clown is standing in front of her. The clown was holding two balloons, which read, "You are the greatest," and a bouquet of flowers. So the clown hands over one of the balloons to Marlene, which she replies, "Oh, how lovely." And at the point when the flowers are handed over, a gun is pulled out. Marlene was shot in the face. Marlene's son Joe, who was then 22, he was in the home. He was eating breakfast when this happened. Her husband Michael, he was on his way to a racetrack in Miami at the time. Marlene Warren died 2 days later. Now this case, it baffled police. It was bizarre. Now it wasn't part of a domestic abuse story, a crime-related family. It just was a mystery. No one was ever arrested for the murder. Plenty of people were questioned. Plenty of the people who knew Marlene were involved in the investigation, but no one person was ever zoned in on. And so the case, it went cold. During the initial investigation, what was uncovered was that Marlene's husband had been having an affair. A pretty serious affair. Not just casual sex. He had actually been seriously involved with a woman named Sheila Keane. And he had been seeing Sheila Keane for a long, long time behind his wife's back. And so both her husband Michael and Sheila, they were questioned in 1990, but to no avail. Police got nowhere, and the two, they just continued to live their life together. They started to cement their relationship. Now that Marlene was dead, they continued their life together. And in 2002, 12 years after Marlene's death, they married. They moved to a 3-bedroom house in Virginia. So they're living the life, right? They're quite happy, but little do they know, police are still convinced that the husband or the mistress Sheila, they know something about this death. Police are convinced they still know something. So police at the time in 1990, they meticulously collected DNA samples. They collected every piece of evidence that they could find. But being 1990, well, technology was a wee bit behind. It was a bit shit. It still had a real distance to go. So, DNA testing did what it could. It just couldn't quite figure out who was the actual killer of Marlene. Now, Marlene's family at the time, they spoke loudly about the fact that they thought her husband Michael had to either be responsible or know who was responsible for the murder. He continued to say he knew nothing. He was just saying, nah, don't know a thing. I know nothing about this. When the news that he had been having this long time affair, the theory was, well, clearly what they've done is they've hired a hitman. They've hired a hitman to get rid of Marlene so that the two of them can be together, rather than go through a messy divorce process. It's easier to just remove the wife, and therefore the husband and the girlfriend, they can be together because the wife's dead. But police tried. They went down this road. Could they find any evidence? Could they fuck? They couldn't find anything which would actually indicate that a hit had ever been brought on Marlene. So as I told you, they moved away to Virginia, and now their married surname was Warren, because that was Michael's name. But Sheila was oddly going by the name of Debbie at this time. Don't really know why she'd changed her name to Debbie, but she had. So they were known as Debbie and Mike. They were living a quiet life miles away, years later. That was about to be absolutely shattered. Only a few months ago, police requested that the DNA from 1990 be retested, and they were under no doubt at that point that they had discovered who it was that had murdered Marlene. Police went down to where they lived, and they followed Debbie, real name Sheila as we know her, and Mike as they drove from their house one day on a routine shopping trip. And as they were leaving their house, 4 police cars pulled them over. Police then arrested Sheila Warren for the murder of Marlene in 1990. She was calm as they put her in the back of the police car. She was taken to the police station where she posed for her mugshot, smiling. Now you can see this image, you can see it's freaky. She's actually smiling. It's like she's smiling at the camera. Fucking weird. Sheila now faces the death penalty for the crime committed in 1990. Her husband Michael says that she's been wrongfully accused. Sheila was never the clown that stood on that doorway with the gun. She was not the clown that stood there. Sheila says it herself. I did not dress as a clown and stand there and shoot her in the face. I was not that person. Police say they have the DNA to prove that she was. Wow, what a fucking crazy story. It's still ongoing. This is still ongoing now. But I love it. I just love that story. Okay, thank you for that one. So, story 2. Michael Bridges. Michael Bridges thought he had committed the perfect crime. He was living life in the belief that he would never be caught. Michael Bridges had been dating 18-year-old Erin Chorney when she suddenly disappeared. Now, their relationship had been a fiery one. Michael was something of a petty criminal who I think he thought of himself as a bit of a Johnny Big Boss, a bit of a gangster, bit of a big time fucking, yeah, I think I'm really fucking, I'm down with the crime. I know what my, it was really, his crimes were petty, his crimes were small, but he's just one of these dickheads, you know the kind, just wanna be a gangster. You're just like, fuck off, what you all about? These guys, okay? So police, when Erin Chorney had disappeared, they treated the case as suspicious, but they weren't really able to ever uncover the whereabouts of Erin. No one really knew where she'd gone. Had she run away? Had she gotten into a dangerous situation? Nobody really knew. Except her boyfriend, Michael Bridges. He knew exactly what had happened. Manitoba police felt the same way. They felt absolutely certain that Michael knew what had happened to Erin, and they set out to prove it, and they did. And what transpired is just fucking amazing. It took a long time. It took some absolute ingenuity from the police, but the results are incredible. After 2 years of not knowing what happened to Erin, they decide to set up a sting. So an officer from the Manitoba Police Force goes into role as a criminal who's part of the National Criminal Syndicate. The officer, who gets referred to as Agent X, and that's what I'll be calling him, Agent X, he befriends Michael Bridges, and he offers him the chance to join the criminal group. He says to him, this is like basically the biggest criminal underworld group that's happening. I can promise you access to money. You'll be part of the biggest crimes happening in Canada. You will be a real player in the underworld. Remember what I just told you? The guy, Michael, he's a dickhead and he thinks he's a player. He thinks he's a fucking baller in this situation. So, for months, Michael is told by Agent X, if you want to proceed, if you want to play with the big boys and you want the money, you want the drugs, you want the sex, you want everything that comes with this life, then we need to know that there is nothing in your past that could come back and bite you on the arse. Is that we need to know that there's nothing hidden in your history, crime-wise, that could come back. We need to know that before we take you on. Michael says, well, I mean, we all know I've had some arrests in the past. Assault, drink driving, petty theft, but they're all quite well known. Agent X says, yeah. We know about these. This is not what interests us. We need to know about the stuff that you would never want anyone to know. Michael says, there isn't anything. I've got nothing else to tell you. Agent X says, well, here's the thing. I'm about to set up a meeting between you and the boss. Now, I love that straight away because I'm like, it's immediately like, am I watching a Hollywood movie? The boss. Agent X. It's all that kind of like, I love it. So Agent X says, I'll set you up a meeting with the boss tomorrow, but this is your last chance to tell me anything. And he says, here's the thing, Michael. I can make anything go away. Anything that you don't want to talk about, you need to tell me now. I can make it disappear. So Michael thinks about this, and Agent X persists. He says, if you want this meeting tomorrow with the boss, you need to be aware. Just tell me. I promise. I'll make it disappear. It'll be gone. So, after hearing the words, it can be gone, Michael starts to open up. What Michael doesn't know, as he's opening up, is that he is in a room that's being filmed. There are microphones all around the room, and everything that he's about to say is being recorded. Michael says, yeah, okay, there might be something. Agent X says, well, okay, tell me. I promise it will go away. I just need to know what it is. So Michael starts to talk, and in absolutely fucking astonishing detail, he starts to tell Agent X about how he killed his girlfriend, Erin Chorley. He starts by explaining that he had become angry with Erin because she'd not dropped an assault charge against him. He had attacked her on a night out months before, and she'd pressed charges. So they remained together, but she didn't drop the charges. I mean, that in itself, let's not even, what the fuck is even that about? If your partner is attacking you and you press charges and you're still with him, I don't even really want to fucking... What's that about? In a fit of rage, Michael had put his arm around her neck and choked her. His intention was to kill her, he says, but he panics when he realises that she's still breathing. So, he then cuts the cord from his mother's hairdryer and he chokes her with it. But realising that she's still breathing from this, he finally drowns her in a bathtub. Afterward, he goes on to explain to Agent X that he strips her, he lays her in the bath, he cleans her body and his fingernails to remove any DNA, and then he goes to bed. Now the next day, as he's walking to the cemetery where his father worked, he sees some freshly dug graves ready to be used in the following week, and an idea comes to him. He says he decided to return after dark and bury Erin's body in a freshly dug grave. He explains that he chooses a white bedsheet to wrap her in. He puts his body in her car and he takes her in darkness to the graveyard. He buries her face up, sends her in the grave. After he carefully measures her body and the grave to make sure that she will fit, he uses a metal shovel with a wooden handle to dig the hole. He repeatedly walks by the grave in the days and the weeks after the murder. He says just to check up on it, just to make sure the dirt's all good, like nothing was bothered. The confession to Agent X lasts 90 minutes. Upon this confession, the sting operation came to an end. Officers entered the room and Michael Bridges was arrested and taken away. As he was being handcuffed and led away, Bridges' first words were, "Just tell me one thing. Is he a cop?" Pointing at Agent X, he says, "Just tell me, is he a fucking cop?" No reply. They just don't reply. In a court, Bridges pleads not guilty. I mean, what the fuck? Not guilty? Are you having a laugh? Not fucking guilty. So his defence lawyer claims that the confession was just to impress the gang that Michael had wanted so much to be a part of this crime fucking underworld gang that he just said that he'd done all these things. Yeah. Nice try, mate. Nice fucking try. Do you know something? I think I would love... I think I would actually bloody love to do an episode about the crazy ways that defence lawyers try to get guilty people off. They are absolute masters at coming up with ways to just try and get a fucking clearly guilty person off. It's I find it insane. It's just it makes me laugh. Erin Chorley's father had to leave the courtroom in tears, hearing the final hours of his daughter. The taped confession, the full thing, the full 90-minute thing, is played to the jurors. He was convicted and he was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole until 2029. That ends this story. What a dickhead. What a fucking dickhead. What a fucking idiot. But also what a great sting by the police. Like, brilliant work. Great work there, Manitoba police. Excellent. Yeah, good. Okay, next is... Whoa, this is crazy levels of survival. This is good. This is good, and also I found myself quite emotional reading, going through this story quite a few times, because there's something dead sweet about it, but also just really... Yes, it's got everything. It's just... Oh, yeah. Anyway, fucking Barry, just go on with it. British family, the Merritts, were on holiday in the UK with their young family. They had 4 young children. Stephanie, 10, Clint, 8, Levin, 5, and Lloyd, 4. Now, it was Lloyd, the 4-year-old, youngest member of the family. It was his birthday, and the family decide they're going to go to the zoo. This trip would prove to be one of the most extraordinary experiences this family would ever go through. At the start of their trip to the zoo, they were loving like the spider monkeys, and Levin remembers that he thought it was really funny when one of the wee monkeys had peed on his dad. So tired of the monkeys, the kids quickly became curious with the gorillas. They wanted to go and see the gorillas. So the mum and dad, they said, okay, that's fine. So his dad, Stephen, lifted 4-year-old Lloyd on his shoulders to get a better look at the gorillas. Levin, 5 years old, decides he's going to follow suit. But what he's going to do is he's going to clamber up the wall. So the wall that's looking down into the gorilla pit, he's thinking, I'm going to climb up this wall and I'm going to be able to see the gorillas. In the absolutely terrifying moments that followed, he slipped and he fell 20 feet down into the pit, snapping his arm and fracturing his skull in the process. So the family and onlookers are watching from above as the 5-year-old lies motionless in the gorilla pit. As he lies motionless, the real terror begins. A 7-foot-tall, 18-stone silverback male gorilla called Jambo slowly approaches Levin's body. His parents are screaming to Levin not to move. They're screaming for him to stay as still as he can. But the 5-year-old has been knocked out and he can't hear them. Zoo staff are acting as fast as possible and wondering what they can do to save the boy. Jambo, the gorilla, approaches the motionless body, and all that anybody in this moment can do is wait and see what happens next. Jambo reaches out and he gently strokes Levin's back. He positions his huge body next to the child and he keeps his arm right on his back. The way that Jambo has positioned himself is in a way that the other gorillas can't get near the body. After a few minutes, Levin wakes up and he begins to scream. He begins to cry. He begins to become aware of the fact that there is a gorilla standing over him. This causes the other gorillas in the pit to react. And now Jambo does something completely incredible. He leads the other gorillas into the pen away from Levin's body. When one of the other gorillas, named Hobbit, tries to make a run for the boy, Jambo gets in the way and he stops it. With all the gorillas in the pen, the gate gets closed, but Jambo is still outside. Jambo returns to Levin's body and he sits with him. He puts his hand back on his back and he sits there as the zookeepers and 2 members of the ambulance crew manage to lower themselves down and harness his body to be pulled back to safety. Levin is airlifted to Southampton General Hospital. He spends 6 weeks in hospital with a fractured skull and a broken arm. Jambo becomes a hero, and quite fucking rightly. What a hero gorilla. What a fucking hero. Following Levin's recovery, the family are invited back to the zoo and they've remained in contact with the zoo ever since. The zoo commissioned a life-size statue of Jambo, and when that was ready, Levin cut the ribbon so that the story of Jambo would always be remembered. Levin, as an adult, now has his own young children. He's got his own kids, and he says, I'm forever thankful to Jambo, as obviously it could have gone many ways. It was amazing how he protected me in that way. Oh, I love that story. I fucking love it. It's just a huge... It's just that, you know what it is? It's the thing of going, it's nature, it's all those things, but it's just seeing the sheer fucking imposing size of that gorilla and this wee tiny... Oh, he looks so small. This wee, Levin, 5 years old, he just looks so small, lying there completely unconscious. And you just watch the gorilla kind of wander over to him. And there is, even though we know the story ends well, there is this hideous moment where you're watching it and you're like, what is that gorilla going to do? What the fuck is going to happen in this gorilla pit? And the moment when he just puts his arm over him to protect him, it's just so beautiful. Okay, the final story, not so gorgeous, but it's worth telling. I'm going to tell you the story of Stephen Port. Who was Stephen Port? Well, apart from being one of the biggest fucking pricks that's ever lived in the world, he is also known as the Grinder Killer. Stephen Port was born in Southend-on-Sea. When he was a child, he moved to Dagenham, and he grew up in Dagenham, where his parents still live. He was described as being a loner at school. In about 2004, Stephen came out as being gay, and he moved to a flat in Barking in London. He worked as a chef for Stagecoach. So Stagecoach, yeah, it's a big bus company, and he worked for them. So why does he go by the name of the Grinder Killer? And what does that actually mean? What is Grinder? Well, Grinder is, if you don't know what it is, I'm sure most people do. Grinder, people say I guess it's the kind of same as your Tinder. I guess it's kind of the same as any of these dating apps. Although, the truth is, actually, it's probably more of a sex app than it is anything. It's not really a dating app, Grindr. It's more there for guys who just want to hook up. Guys who are just looking to meet someone and shag. Like, I would like to say, yes, it's like Tinder in the dating sense, but it's not. It's got a distance search on it, in that you could, if you had the Grindr app, you could open it and find basically the nearest available man for sex, or, you know, and it literally, it would tell you it down to, oh, there's a guy within 100 meters. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. So I think people kid themselves on when they say it's dating. It's not. It's purely for hookups. It's purely for sex. So, Stephen Port was on Grindr a lot of the time. He would chat with guys. He would invite them back to his home, to his flat in Barking. Once inside his flat, he would offer his guests a drink. They would accept, not knowing that the drink was laced with GHB, the date rape drug. Victim number 1 was Anthony Walgate. Now, Anthony was working as a male escort at the time. He was using Grindr not as his escort service. He was actually just using it for personal sex. He was just using it for his own time. And he happened to connect with Stephen Port. The two hooked up. And the following morning, Anthony Walgate would be found dead. He would be found dead in the street outside of Stephen Port's flat. Who called the police in this situation? Stephen Port himself. He himself called the police to say there is a dead body outside of my block of flats. Police arrive. They try to identify the victim. They discover he's Anthony Walgate. But what connection do they make to the man who made the call? Well, none, really. They just assume that Stephen Port was the guy who happened to just make the call. They don't assume that actually there's any kind of connection between the guy who made the call and actually might this guy have anything to do with it. So for months and months and months, this goes completely unconnected. Police just cannot find who killed this guy. Random death. They find that in his system, he has the date rape drug. There's traces of other drugs in his system, but still, they can't find it. So they go back to Stephen Port. They say, right, well, hang on. You made the call. What do you know about this guy? And he says, nothing more than, I don't know. I just saw him lying in the street. And they say, okay. Right. Are you sure you don't know anything? You sure he wasn't in your house at any point tonight? And Stephen's story starts to kind of fall apart. He starts to become inconsistent. He starts saying, yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe I knew him. Or maybe I didn't. Police start to get suspicious. They start thinking, okay, something isn't... Now, basically, I think what this is, he's killed Anthony and he shit himself. This is his first victim. He's absolutely shit himself. He doesn't really know what to do. And so he doesn't really know what to tell police. He starts telling them all manner of stories. Yes, I knew him. Yes, no, hang on a minute. Oh shit, I've said yes, I knew him. No, I didn't know him. Actually, and it's all balls. It's all bollocks. So police, they work through all of this, and while they can't actually prove that they think Stephen had anything to do with the death, what they can say is you have perverted the course of justice, and he's charged with that. So he goes to prison for 8 months. Stephen goes to prison for 8 months for perverting the course of justice, for just not being honest with the police in the first instance. 8 months pass, he's freed, he's ready now for what is about to come next. 3 names for you. Gabriel Koyara, 22. Daniel Whitworth, 21. Jack Taylor, 25. 3 men that Stephen Port met through Grindr and faced the same death as Anthony. They were all invited to his flat. They were all given a drink. The bodies of the 3 men that I just named were found in a graveyard, the graveyard of St. Margaret's Church, a few minutes' walk from Stephen Port's flat. Post-mortem examinations of the 4 young men who had died revealed that each had died from a high dosage of GHB, but that there were other drugs in their system. There were animal nitrate, otherwise known as poppers, there was Viagra, and there was crystal meth. Now, this led to a big discussion going on at the time about chemsex and about what is chemsex and why this happens and why people choose to have chemsex and what even is it? It is just basically choosing to have sex and to use things like Viagra, like poppers, like any kind of drug you can get your hand on, which is how Stephen Port was basically operating. So when he was meeting these guys on Grindr, he was saying, come back to mine, I've got all the drugs going, I can give you Viagra, I can give you poppers, I can give you all these things, and we'll have crazy fucking sex all night long on these drugs. And then what he was doing was, he was actually getting them back on that basis, giving them some of these drugs, but then also giving them the date rape drug, raping them, and then killing them. Stephen Port had strangled each of his victims to death. So I'd love to wrap this up and say that police swooped in on Stephen and that there was an arrest, but no. The investigation was an absolute mess. Family members of the victims were outraged at how long it took for police to figure everything out. Police were at a loss. They had 3 bodies on their hands. And it was only when they discovered CCTV footage of Stephen Port walking with one of the victims through the graveyard, chillingly the graveyard they would eventually be found dead in, that they thought, oh, okay, hang on, there's Stephen Port with a man and he's walking through the graveyard. Who is this man? So, a sister of one of the victims pleads with police. She pleads and she pleads and she says, please take the CCTV footage and zoom in on Stephen Port's face, get an image and please put that out. Let's find him. Police are like, well, it's not normally what we do, so I'm not sure about it. She insists, she's like, please, it's the only way you'll catch him. So they do. A week later, 11 men have come forward and said, I know who this guy is. He brought me back to his flat. He gave me drugs. He raped me. His name is Stephen. His name is Stephen Port, and I can show you where he lives. So Stephen Port is caught and arrested and is currently living a life sentence without the chance of parole. Good. Good fucking good. That one's weird, isn't it? It's such... Oh, it's a horrible one. It's a fucking horrible story. It's horrible, horrible, horrible start to finish. Okay, this last one is there's an element of sadness to it, but I also think there's an element of beautifulness about it. Okay, it's the last story. It's crazy. It's just kind of lovely. Carol Smith was just 12 years old when he drowned on a scouting trip to the Gower Coast in South Wales in 1947. So he was on a scouting trip with 30 other boys his age, and Carol had been earning a badge for his boat skills, but when the boat returned, Carol wasn't there. His body was found an hour later floating in the water. It was an absolutely tragic accident, and Carl's family were left devastated by his death. They moved on with their life, but they never forgot Carl. For 60 years, Carl's younger sister visited her brother's grave every week. She would lay flowers and she would say a prayer for her brother. About 20 years ago, she began to notice that she wasn't the only one leaving flowers. Mysteriously, flowers were beginning to appear weekly at the grave, consistently appearing. There was no note. There was no clue. Where were the flowers coming from? Who was leaving the mystery flowers? So she asked family. She asked friends. She asked anyone. And she couldn't get an answer. Does anyone know who's leaving these flowers? Any guesses? She could not get an answer. So she went to the BBC. I love the sass of this. I love that she went to the British Broadcasting Corporation, the biggest media outlet in the whole of in the whole of Britain, and said, "Can you help me find who it is that's leaving these flowers? Because I want to know who it is for 20 years has been leaving these flowers." But they said, yeah. The media department were like, yeah, okay, let's do a TV special about it. Who was the mysterious flower bringer? Who is doing this? So the programme airs, and incredibly, Raymond Westborough, he's watching the TV programme and he feels a shock. He was the mysterious flower bringer. He had brought flowers every week for 20 years, and now he's oddly watching a TV show that's searching for him. So he contacts the BBC and he says, yeah, it's me. This is me. I've been doing this every week and I have done this. So who was Raymond? Well, Raymond was the Boy Scout who shared a tent with Carl the night before he died. But most importantly, when Carl didn't return from that trip, it was Raymond who found Carl's body floating in the water. And he had never forgotten that. And so, the only way that Raymond could really deal with how he felt about that was to leave the flowers. Carl's sister was thrilled to finally have an answer. The two met, and there is the most beautiful footage of the two of them at the graveside. And so the mystery was solved. I mean, it's just a gorgeous story. There's so much shit in this world. There's so much to fucking cry about and so much terrible stuff happening. I just think that's beautiful. Let's remember, people still care. Okay, I'm about to be over and out from this episode, so I love you. I love your stories. Don't stop sending them to me. Please keep sending me your extraordinary stories. Okay, as always, extraordinary stories. You know where to get me. The Facebook group, the Facebook page. If you want to if you want to touch me, touch me. I didn't mean if you want to touch me. If you want to get. I just said if you want to touch me. If you want to get in touch, it's on Twitter at Extra Stories Pod. There's Instagram. I'm on Patreon. Just get in touch with me. Okay, so this has been episode 31. This has been your... I'm still laughing about the fact that I said if you want to touch me. Okay, episode 31, over and out. Okay, goodbye. Fucking hell. Oh, that was the shittest sign off I've ever done. Oh, it's bollocks. Oh, fuck. Alfie, do you think people will be okay with that? No, you're a dog. You're not going to know the answer.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other.